Welcome back to our live coverage of Comic Con 2014. I'm Michael Artsis. Thanks so much for joining us. Don't forget to download our app, by the way, in the iTunes, Android, and Kindle stores, the BeTerrific app. You can engage with us, follow us, watch our live shows, and catch all the content we do that's not live. And by the way, in the Geek, we are syndicating to geekbeat.tv in the Geekbeat chat room. What's up, geeks? Love you guys. You guys are asking me about this sangria. We're going to open it later. We're going to pop that open. That is Senor Sangria, and it's phenomenal. A good friend of mine, Rick, makes that stuff. Now, you've probably seen my next guest's film already because I know you're into Star Wars figures as much as everybody here at Comic Con, and this guy is the master when it comes to Star Wars figures and toys in general. The movie is called Plastic Galaxy. It's out on Vimeo, it's in iTunes, it's on Amazon, on DVD. You can get it anywhere. Brian Stillman, thanks so much for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me.
I am so excited about this film. First of all, I got to see a couple of cuts a couple of years ago when you were still putting it together. How long did it take you to put it together?
Oh man, I've been working on it for, about 3 years. It's the fact that you saw a couple cuts a couple years ago is sort of horrifying to me. It's taken, it seems like forever, but yeah, it's been about 3 years, 3.5 years.
And you have an entire room dedicated to toys, gadgets, gizmos, and Star Wars figures. It's one of the biggest collections I've ever seen. So before we get into the movie and Star Wars, let's talk about some of your collection. You've got we talked about this, I interviewed you, I caught you up to you in the hallway and I interviewed you about this, but you've got the original ray gun from the Buck Rogers series. Yeah,
well, I have, it's the first toy ray gun ever made. It's 1934, Buck Rogers. It's made by Daisy. It's called the XZ31 Rocket Pistol, which is an appropriate sort of spacey name for it.
And you let me play with it and handle it. It was so cool.
I did. I let you handle my pistol.
I knew you were going to take it there, man. I knew. I said,
how do I toss me softballs? What am I going to do?
And I said, how am I going to get this in without him making a joke? And I just had to let it go because it's going to happen.
Sometimes you got to do it. It's Comic Con.
What's your favorite figurine or toy that you have, or your most prized possession?
Well, I have so many. It's hard to pick one. I guess one of my favorites is it's a robot from the early '60s, sort of a bullet-shaped robot with little feet on it. It's called Mr. Atomic. Really love that one. It's one of the toys that first got me collecting. I saw that, I was just inspired by it.
How many do you have? Do you have any idea?
I haven't counted in a while. I've got a lot of vintage ray guns. Dozens and dozens and dozens. Fewer robots.
Is your wife into this, or is she like, hey, listen,
she likes
this needs to go in a storage bin?
No, here's the deal. When we got our apartment together, she said, you get your own room. I was like, that is awesome.
Yeah.
If I have to, dear. And she set it up. She said, okay, you'll get an office. You do some work at home. I was like, yeah, work from home. And it became the toy room.
Right.
So I kind of contain it. So she likes it, though. When people come over, it's awesome. She's not a collector herself, but when people come over who haven't seen the collection, she'll drag them into the toy room and be like, you have to see Brian's toys. So, that's cool.
And you've got a small, look, it's a small apartment.
It's a New York City apartment.
Oh, yeah, it's not a small apartment but by New York City standards.
No, but it's small
by anybody
Hobbit
else.
standards.
Right.
It's small by everyone's standards.
Everyone's standards around the world. And you've got some interesting apartments in your building. There's one guy who's got an entire green wall in the building.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
That's pretty amazing. So, Plastic Galaxy, tell me about how you came up with the concept. We've never actually talked about this. Yeah. How did you come up with the concept of doing a documentary on Star Wars figures?
Well, I'm a collector.
Yeah.
I started collecting I grew up with Star Wars toys. I love Star Wars toys. I've always loved Star Wars.
Do you have a favorite Star Wars toy?
Do I have a favorite Star Wars toy? Yeah, I have a few, but the very sort of first Luke Skywalker came out 1978. And it's a variation. It has this is going to get super geeky,
That's what we're here for.
Comic-Con, people. It's Comic-Con. It's the double telescoping lightsaber Luke, which means it's Luke Skywalker, and you pull the lightsaber out of his arm, and then you pull it out a little bit more.
Love it.
2 parts. And they canceled it after, a very short period of time. A couple months they got rid of it because it was too expensive to make and it always broke. So I really like it because it's early Star Wars toys.
Awesome.
But the film, yes, I was a collector, and grew up on these toys, got out of it, as I got older and stuff. Got back into them a few years ago, and I'm the type of collector who likes to know all about the stuff that I collect, the history, the stories behind it. I figured there are lots of books out there. Someone had to make a movie about this. No one had. So I figured, okay, I'll do it myself.
I love it. I think it's really, really great.
Yeah, it's a passion project.
But it's cool. I mean, I watched some cuts and I really like it. I can't wait to watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm excited for it. And
Thank you.
people can go to Vimeo to watch it. They can also go to plasticgalaxy.com.
Yeah, it's plasticgalaxymovie.com. If they go there, we've got a link to the Vimeo site where it's Vimeo on demand. And in November, we'll be on other streaming platforms.
And it's available for DVD.
Yeah, you can buy the DVD on Amazon. It's got 40 minutes of extras, so all sorts of, like, it's sort of like the warp drive of, like, super geekdom, and it just takes you into other worlds with those extras. But some of the most fun stuff.
Did you get off on other topics? Like, did you, like, you're interviewing somebody who has a Star Wars collection, and you're talking to them about that, and then they're like, oh, I also have this other collection, and you get off on that? I mean, not in the movie, but I mean, like, is that part of what the extras will be?
No. The extras are just delving deeper into it, because it's the story of Star Wars toys. It's not really about collecting. It's more, although we talk to a lot of collectors, it's more about the history and how they were made. So we talked to the guys who created them, who worked at Kenner. That's pretty cool. Yeah, hunting them down. We got to see prototypes. We got to see the early sketches. We got to see the sort of preliminary drawings and stuff, and all that's in the film. So it's really about how these things were made, how they became a phenomenon, and how they changed both the toy and movie industries, which is sort of amazing. I mean, people don't realize, before Star Wars toys, there was no toy licensing for movies. There was very little. It wasn't successful. Everyone assumed it was a non-starter. After Star Wars toys, it's built into every single action movie deal, period. I mean, that's what dominates the toy stores.
What's your favorite story from the film?
My favorite story from the film. 1977, Star Wars comes out in May, and Kenner, this sort of mid-level toy company in Cincinnati, they had signed the deal to put out these toys. They weren't expecting much, because it was a science fiction movie at a time when science fiction movies weren't as hot as they are today. It was a toy line for a movie, which just wasn't done. So they had small plans. Well, Star Wars opens, and it's huge. It's the biggest thing of all time. And Kenner is suddenly saying, okay, we gotta have toys. We gotta have action figures. We gotta have spaceships. We gotta have play sets. But there was no way to get them done in time for Christmas. Movie opened in May of '77. You need like a year to get these things into production.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
So they released an empty box. It was a thin cardboard envelope, and in it was a little coupon you could fill out to mail away for the toys that they would send you in March or so of '78. So Christmas, kids come downstairs, they open their things, and they get an empty Star Wars box. They had a little play set that folded down, but it was all cardboard. I think Do you
have one of those?
I have the 4 figures you got when you mailed away. I'm still hunting for a clean envelope. So if anyone's out there, you know, I'm looking for one.
When you met with these guys, they didn't have one, and like.
Oh, people have them, but when you're making a movie like this, I mean, look, you're a journalist, you know how it is. You have to go in. You can't go in as a collector. When you're talking to these guys, you can't be like, wow, great interview. So, is that for sale? Is that for sale? Is that for sale?
Of course.
I mean, I met a lot of people who have them, and there's certainly pictures, you know, we have them in the film, but I don't have one on my toy shelf yet.
You got to get one on your toy shelf. That's a great story, though. That is a phenomenal story. So is there
crazy?
That's almost like the Atari ET story. Is there an Atari ET story where somebody failed with something for Star Wars? I don't think
yes. Amazingly, you would think Star Wars would be like printing money.
Right.
In 1980, I believe, probably going to get that wrong, 80, 81. I forget, I'm sure you'll get lots of emails correcting me on that, but Star Wars released the Micro line, which are these little metal figures and little play sets, and the idea was if they shrink the scale down to about that big, you could have huge play sets and it wouldn't fill your entire house. And the toy tanked because parents had already invested heavily into these action figures for kids, the 3 3/4 inch figures. And they said, well, we don't want to buy this stuff all over again. And the little figures were made of metal and they didn't move.
And they're probably, realistically, a choking hazard as well.
Could have been, yeah. So after 6 months, they killed the line.
Wow.
And, you know, you'd think, what could possibly fail in Star Wars? Well, the Star Wars Micro line. Interestingly, 15 years later or so, Galoob put out their Micro Machines line for Star Wars. Yeah. They were a huge, huge success. So it was really like Kenner was kind of ahead of the curve on that, but just a little too far ahead.
I think that Star Wars kind of made Kenner's name, right? I mean,
absolutely, absolutely. And the problem is, when you're built upon a foundation of kind of one product, well, what happens when that product goes away?
Yeah.
And Kenner really took a hit when Star Wars ended. They had success after that. They did They did the Robin Hood toys that were the tie into the Kevin Costner movie. Interestingly enough, reusing some of the Star Wars molds to make those toys. They had RoboCop. They had some Alien stuff.
RoboCop. You could probably even almost use the mold for CP3O.
Well, they didn't, but yeah, I mean, they definitely reused stuff, at least with the Robin Hood line. So they had toy lines that were successful after that, but eventually what happened is Hasbro came in the 90s and they bought Kenner. They kept Kenner going for a little while in Cincinnati and then ultimately moved them to Rhode Island where Hasbro's located. And Kenner disappeared. You know, Star Wars really was a big sort of foundational piece for them. Although they became known as a great action figure and movie tie-in company. That's why Hasbro wanted them.
I love Micro Machines. I had the Micro Machines ones, and I love that. You remember the commercials? Micro Machines, the real thing.
I do.
That guy talks so fast.
That guy freaked me out when I was a little kid. It's like, no human should be talking that fast.
And then you met me.
Right.
Hey, listen, it's Plastic Galaxy. It's on Vimeo. Go to plasticgalaxythemovie.com.
Plastic Galaxy Movie. PlasticGalaxyMovie.com.
PlasticGalaxyMovie.com. I know it's phenomenal because I've seen some cuts. I can't wait to see the real thing.
Thank you,
The
man.
whole thing. You got the DVD. You've got on Vimeo, and there'll be other distribution throughout the
starting
year.
in November. Yep.
Excellent. I'm very excited.
Also,
Brian.
AT&T Uverse. If you have cable TV, we have VOD, video on demand on cable.
Awesome.
Which to me is like, whoa, magic.
Yeah.
Like, stuff I did is on TV.
That's pretty cool.
It's a crazy
because
world,
that's never
man.
happened to you before.
No. Anyway.
But that's awesome. Congratulations, Brian. Thank you so much.
Thank
we'll be
you.
back with a whole lot more coverage here from Comic Con 2014 in New York City. Keep it locked here. We'll be back right after this.